My girlfriend left me hanging when her friends embarrassed me, so I've had enough of this drama. My girlfriend, let's call her Sonia, was going to a ladies' brunch this past weekend. She asked if I could pick her up. I said sure. She texted me and asked if I wanted to grab a drink with them and then we could go. I said I didn't want to intrude, but she insisted and said it was fine. So I joined. No one is talking to me when I get there, and when I try to join the conversation, I'm ignored. That one drink before we leave starts to turn into more. She has her arm around me but isn't looking or talking to me. I feel pretty excluded, so I excuse myself, say something came up, and go to leave. I send her a quick text saying I feel like I'm intruding, and that it's no problem. I'll pick her up later. She immediately calls me, insists that I come back, that I was imagining it, etc. So, I do. Things do seem better at this point. People are looking at me, and it seems whatever weirdness is over. I'm enjoying myself until I get back from the restroom. Immediately her friends do a hush hush. One of her friends tells me to excuse myself from the conversation. I'm sort of taken back, so I look at Sonia. She doesn't look at me. I feel shitty, like a child that's asked to sit in a corner or something. And I don't want to make a scene, so I stand up to leave. Then she says no, just excuse the topic. Don't listen for a bit. I'm just confused at this point, so I sit back down and pull out my phone. Obviously, I can't not listen and they're talking about my girlfriend's ex. He's apparently missing in a foreign country. No one knows where he is. Sonia gets these weird calls from different numbers every couple of months. It's been 2 years. This is all mostly new to me, and the moment I start to hear her getting weird calls from him, I just get up and go to the bar. I didn't want to make a scene or anything, but talking about that in front of me, without holding my hand, asking me if it was alright to dive into talking about her ex, or even looking at me at all just seemed really humiliating and disrespectful. So, 40 minutes go while I'm at the bar. She texts me a sorry 20 minutes in, but it takes another 20 for her to stop the conversation. I've just been eating dinner at the bar and grabbing a drink when she comes over to apologize. I tell her that it's not okay, that I feel really hurt and angry, and that if the situation was reversed she would be furious, which she agrees with. We go back and forth at the bar and then go home. On the way home, she's extremely defensive. She apologizes and then gets mad at me for not saying it's okay. She says that she knows she made a mistake, but what else should she do? She blames me for leaving the conversation. She's getting angry, so I drop her off at home, say good night, and go home. The next day, she is extremely apologetic. She says she was a horrible girlfriend. She says she has no idea why she didn't change the topic, look at me, or why it took her 40 minutes to realize that it was shitty to invite your boyfriend and then exclude him so you can talk about your ex. She says she barely slept last night because she has no idea why she acted like that, or why she got angry at me for expressing how I was feeling. We ended up having a long conversation where she listened to me without getting upset. She apologized profusely. She promised it wouldn't happen again, etc. Unfortunately, now I can just feel all of my guard up. I know that in the grand scheme of a relationship, this wasn't some grand betrayal or anything, but it really feels like in such a simple, obvious moment to have your partner's back, she totally let me down. This isn't the first time I've felt excluded around her friends, either, but before I just chalked it up to my insecurities. Now I feel like I don't trust that she'll stand up for me, or consider me at all when she's around her friends. I don't need her focus to be on me or anything. But, when she's around my friends and I always make an active effort to include her in our conversations. If one of my friends told Sonia to excuse herself from the conversation, I would shut that friend down and tell him not to talk to her like that. If my friends were asking me about my ex while she was around, I would say, who cares? I have Sonia with me now, and make it clear to her that she was my priority. We've talked about all of this. I've communicated all of this. She has apologized profusely. And she has promised that it won't happen again. She has made it clear that she understands how I'm feeling, and I greatly appreciate that. I don't feel safe around her friends, and that trust needs to be earned again, which she has acknowledged. Unfortunately, in the meantime, I don't know how to feel better. I still feel hurt, I'm still kinda pissed, and I still feel worried. She was going on a bachelorette party weekend in Maui with these friends, and I wasn't worried before. But now, because I don't know that I can trust her around her friends, I start catastrophizing in my head about things going down at that party. I feel like I need something from her, and I don't know what it is. Furthermore, I don't really know how I can get it outside of just more time with her friends and more evidence that I won't get repeatedly thrown under the bus in that situation. More info. It's just so out of character for her to treat me like that. Part of what I love about her is how usually in tune she is with me, how upfront she is about what she needs, and how receptive she is to my needs. I don't feel like this was big enough to break up over, and 99% of the time, she makes me really happy. I just don't understand where this came from. And it makes me wonder if this is a fluke, or if it's the real her. She has said she realizes how awful it was. She has been very comprehensive and sincere in her apology. I'm just so thrown. However, she said that if something like this ever happened again, she'll shut down the topic. Also, the phone calls are definitely from him. Sorry if I was unclear about that. I wasn't following the conversation closely enough, so I was trying to convey my experience. One of the friends was friends with the ex before she was friends with Sonia, and that friend brought it up to try to get info. None of his friends know where he is or what happened. And this isn't the reason they broke up. She left him, then all this shit happened. She basically said that she's 100% over him. But they were together/engaged for almost a decade. And it's a little scary for someone who was a part of your life like that to be missing in such a weird way. I definitely need to ask her more about the calls. I think she did the thing that I understand where in her mind. They were meaningless and she didn't want to worry me about them. I think the intention was positive. It just made what happened sting all the more. I really want to stay together. But I definitely can't forget this. I want to be in a place where I can forgive, but it is challenging right now. I think a lot of this can be chalked up to my boundaries. Obviously, her behavior wasn't good, but knowing her, I feel like if I had been more able to articulate what was wrong before it went too far or just left when I said I was going to leave, this would be a very different story. Update. It is absolutely insane that this was only a month ago. It feels like so much longer. We broke up. I broke up with her last night. Things got better. Then they got worse. Then they got better again. Then we were around her friends again and I felt like she was a completely different person who didn't treat me as nicely. Again. I yelled at her in front of her friends. She yelled at me. And she gave me an ultimatum to spend the night with her or leave forever. I spent the night. Then the next week I called to talk about how uncomfortable I was with that ultimatum. And she immediately accused me of trying to break up with her. She then drove over to pick up her stuff without listening to me at all. She called me after she picked up her stuff to apologize. She then blamed me for everything that happened. Then she accused me of playing her and cheating on her. Then called me again to say how hurt she was that I didn't fight for her harder when she suggested breaking up. The next day, I sent her a breakup text because I felt like I couldn't do it in person. She drove over. Said everything would change, things would be different. We worked so well together. Not to let one mistake ruin what we had. I said let me think on my own for a week. Obviously, she did not leave me alone that week for one day. She started with good mornings and pleasantries, which I asked her to stop for the week. Then about how hard it was the next day. Then the day after that about all the good times we had. Then the next day about how torturous what I was doing was to her and that she would never do this to me. That one stung a lot. All of that honestly made the decision easier. I don't think she was doing it intentionally. I just think she was in a lot of pain and thought this was her one chance to change my mind. So she threw all caution or fear of looking crazy/foolish to the wind. I don't know. Last night we sat down to dinner which was pleasant. I made it clear we were done and said goodbye. Then when I got home, she called me, begged me to come over one more time. Said she was terrified about being alone. Said that we were perfect for each other. She loved me, and she couldn't say goodbye. After about 30 minutes of us both sobbing into our phones, 25 more minutes more than I should have let it go on, I said I would say goodbye and hang up. And I did. I turned off my phone and woke up to 3 voicemails and 10 texts, ranging from how much trouble she was in, thanking me for our time together to asking if she could come over to say that she'll always love me. The last thing she sent me was a very rational, very honest apology saying she won't contact me, she'll always love me, that she was sorry for hurting me, and that she never meant to. I know my last post really brought out a lot of anger toward her, and seeing it all written out like this, trust me, I'm aware of how manipulative and manic she was. It's just so difficult because it would switch on a dime. Sometimes we were great and it was so calm and safe, and then boom I would have my guards raised higher than a skyscraper and we would be going at it. So, when she leaves a voicemail that sounds more like that side of her, my heart just melts, until I remember the other side, which isn't hard. I have so much tangible evidence of that other side now, in texts and voicemails. It's also hard because in that dinner we both acknowledged that it was mostly when she was around her friends, and that's something that in some part of my head feels fixable. It's just really hard. Rationally I know that I would have to be a masochistic idiot to stay in this dynamic. But in my gut and in my heart I feel like I just threw away something amazing. That this was it for me, that love is worth fighting for, that these fights were us challenging each other and that we could have emerged on the other side as stronger, more complete, better people, and a fantastic couple. But, like I said, I know that's not true. It's just really hard not to let my mind go there. It doesn't help that one of the main things she told me was that I think too much and to go with my heart. As is the case with most of the updates that end in breakups, I don't really know what I'm looking for here. The writing on the wall saying I did the right thing couldn't be clearer, but it sure as hell doesn't feel right now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Girlfriend is always disrespectful to my parents and they can't stand her anymore. This is my first girlfriend ever. We started dating 10 months ago after meeting on OKC and hit it off. We both struggle with social stuff. She tends to be better but for whatever reasons her social anxieties come about in the oddest of moments in the oddest of ways. It's been a mostly good ride, with quite a few bumps. Quite recently we've had some big fights over some serious shit, and some just plain stupid shit. We're working through those. It's tiring. But the main issue comes to my parents, and how they see her. Her parents love me and think I'm a great guy. Generally say hi and speak with them briefly. Even with a language barrier, my parents don't quite see her the same way. Of course, my dad is very chill, and my mom is the more intense one, but there always seemed to be a bit of friction between my mom and her. My GF has remarked to me she thinks my mom doesn't like her and is always judging her, which my mom has told me is not the case. When my GF comes over to my place, she sometimes says hi, but then we mostly go up to my room. I'd love to have more interaction with each of our families, but a lot of the time she just rebuffs it with not feeling comfortable. It almost feels as though she wants to control or monopolize my time with others. My mom has asked me before what she does to make me happy. I've always felt she has, even when looking at it. We do have different interests in some ways. She wants to be a surgeon. I'm a software engineer. So where some of the real issues occur is on two particular disagreements we've had. The other day my GF was over at my house. I had gone to look for something for her downstairs, like a hard drive or something. While down there my mom is cleaning out one of our old file cabinets that had some of my stuff in there. As I was looking for the drive and checking on some pizza I had in the oven, my mom asked me to help her sort through some stuff. Of course, I'm going to help her. This takes about 10-15 minutes or so, and my GF is up in my room just by herself, not interacting with anyone. She comes down later clearly upset, asks where I am, doesn't even look or speak to my parents, takes some pizza, and goes back to my room. I linger down there a little bit longer before returning and having a fight with my GF over this. She says I left her up there for ages and was rude and inconsiderate. She felt I should have told her I was helping my mom out, and that she considered this her time because I was done with my homework and was going to spend some time with her. This always bugged me, but I agreed to let her know if something like that was going to change. This was also the first fight my parents took notice of. Another fight we had was recently. We spent a weekend at a hotel and my GF left her car at my parents' place. It was on the street, covering part of the mailbox, but not enough space for the mailman to fully pull all the way up. He won't deliver the mail if he doesn't have space. My parents didn't notice until the next day and my dad sent me a text saying, "Hey, could you guys come to fix this?" I thought it was a simple thing as we'd go up there before we headed to the city later that day. My GF has a very different reaction. She got very grumpy at the request, questioning why my parents didn't tell her the first time when she parked. She felt it was fine and didn't want to change it. She said it was wasting her time and that she was annoyed by the request of my parents, not wanting to fight again over stupid shit. I said, "Okay, you can stay here and I'll move it." She then had the gall to tell me that when I got to my parents' house, I should just move the car and not stop and talk to my parents. She also said she didn't want me to park it in my driveway when my parents said she could park it there. So, I'm on the phone with my parents when I'm driving up. My parents felt very disrespected. They said she doesn't have the authority to tell me or them where she'll park their car on their property. They also said if she wanted to dictate that, she could come to move it herself. I pulled it forward eventually, but there's more. Later the next day, my parents stopped me to talk to me about my GF. They mentioned that they really don't like her anymore and are at the point where they aren't really welcoming her to her home. Some of the reasons they mention they don't like her: 1, they feel she's controlling me. They feel it's always me catering to her and doing what she wants, and that I never get that same support. 2, they think that us being on the phone all the time, even when someone leaves because she wants us to feel close and together, is a bit weird. 3, they also feel she's a bit of a brat and childish and petulant, and she was really disrespectful. All in all, they don't feel she's the right one for me. What are my thoughts on this? They're not far off. I share the same ones. We've had a lot of fights recently, some of them based on how she interprets and reacts to things, as in if I don't say something absolutely gently and with the nicest of tones and loving, she gets upset and thinks I'm being harsh. Others based on her thinking I'm doing something wrong or that I'm being silly. I've had those thoughts before, and have squashed them to give her the benefit of the doubt. But the longer I think about it, the more I can see it. An example is my girlfriend isn't a big fan of my robotics hobby. She's told me she thinks it's boring and doesn't see the point because she thinks it's just playing with oversized toys. I was offended at this and said that's an example of not being supportive, and she said she was super supportive by going to 2 of my events. One which she was there and helped with the shit show and then left before it really started. The other because it doubled as a weekend trip for us. I feel, at times I have to walk on pins and needles for fear of not offending her or starting a fight. She says I always start them. Ultimately, I think deep down I know this relationship isn't going to work out, and even with the counseling we're going through, this shit is bound to end badly for me if we continue. After all these fights, she mentions she doesn't love me the same and doesn't know why she continues being with me since I make her so unhappy. But I know if I were actually to break up with her, she'd be devastated and angry and blame me for everything. This isn't healthy. I'm starting to have that come to Jesus moment about this relationship. I need help working out things. I need to know, how do I break out of this without shit blowing up spectacularly? I'm not here to try to force a relationship to continue anymore. I just don't know how to break it to her. Update. So before I get to the update, there are some things I'd like to clear up. I know that my parents are too involved in my relationship and I address that. More on this later. However, this was the first time I ever spoke with my parents about relationship problems, and it only happened because they brought it up to me. On the other hand, I've been in the car with my GF when she's griped about our problems to her mother and her close friends like I wasn't there. Of course, she did this at other times too, giving really personal details. She just didn't respect our privacy. Also, regarding the reference about us getting into a fight because she was in my room alone. I went downstairs to look for something that I needed to help her, and I also went to take out the pizza in the oven that she wanted. I told her this. She said I'd left her alone for an hour, and I was gone for about 20 minutes while checking out the pizza, looking for something, and helping my mom while I was there. That was it. Also, whenever she's been at my house, my mom has never asked me for anything at all. This was a first, and it was because I was there next to her in the kitchen. Finally, regarding the phone call about the mailbox thing. Some people called my parents controlling, but I wouldn't, because during our time together, they never called when we were out or whatnot. They didn't even see her car until the next morning. We weren't far, and the initial plan was for us to go up to the city for a barbecue festival and move the car when we came back that day. But our plans changed when my GF said she was tired and didn't want to go. So, I did, and the cost of time for moving the car was about 20 minutes tops. It was a period in the trip where we had just come back from the pool. And with all that, let's get to the update. It's pretty short and sweet. I did it. I broke up with her yesterday. We actually had another fight yesterday. Won't go into details, wasn't severe, but the fatigue of it made me think, if we're fighting this much, maybe we're not compatible. A lot of tears were shed, and a lot came out from here that I was surprised to hear. In short, she knows she demands a lot of my attention. She says she's like a child sometimes, mainly because we're in two different phases of life. She's in college and works a retail job, and gets to be a college kid. I'm a guy who works a full-time engineering, adult world job. She said she struggles with that. She knows she's confrontational, but that she really doesn't mean to pick fights. In summary, she said a lot about how she's sorry and won't do things, but only now just realized what she was missing by underappreciating me and by me leaving. Don't worry, I didn't fall for any of it. I stuck to my guns and said I'm out. Not another chance, not one more month, week, etc. It's over. The next thing was also to tell my parents off. That went well. I was straight with them and told them that my relationships are my business and that they shouldn't be nosy. Basically, I told them in no uncertain terms that they would not be interfering or giving their advice or input unless I specifically asked for it. They were very receptive. I also told them the details of my relationship are for me and my partner only. And yes, we did fight a lot. I know it's just not healthy. We need to be in healthier relationships. I might love her, but I don't want to stay in a relationship that's unhealthy. So now I'm single. But this relationship ended. There's a lot to take from it, and a lot I can do to grow. Also, yes, I'm working on moving out. I've got a lot of friends in California and I'd like to be there by this time next year. Thank you for all the advice, everyone.